Dalalatin Finar. My respected brothers and sisters, we want to talk just briefly today about one of the pillars of this religion, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca. Because we're in the pilgrimage season, we know that Thursday after next, I believe, will be Eid. And so it's important when coming up on the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah that we treat those days like special days. It's like a mini Ramadan. You know, like Ramadan is the month in which we fast for the entire month. The best night of the year is in the month of Ramadan, Laylatul Qadr. But then the best day of the year is in Dhul Hijjah, the day of Arafat. So the best night of all the nights is Laylatul Qadr. It's better than 1,000 months. But the best day of all of the days is the day of Arafat. So we should definitely fast as much as we can up to and including the day of Arafat in preparation for the Eid that is upon us. And we know that the Kaaba in Mecca was first built by Adam, alayhi salatu wasalam, as the first house of worship. So when Adam and his wife, they were sent down from heaven and they were sent into the dunya, they didn't land in the same place. One of them landed in what is now called India, right? This is what some of the ulama say. And they had to find each other. And some of the other ulama say, no, one landed on Safa and the other one landed on Marwa. And when they met on Mount Arafat. Arafat means to know one another, or to know somebody. So they got to know each other in a human sense, because they had already known each other in an otherworldly sense when they was in paradise. But for the dunya, they got to reacquainted with each other, right? And all of the prophets, they would go to Mecca for pilgrimage. And at this time it was called Becca. And the holiest land, according to most of the scholars, there's a difference of opinion, but basically the way it works is the holiest land on the face of the earth is in Mecca, right? Well, generally speaking, Mecca is the most sacred place, and then Medina is the second most sacred place. But the most sacred land or dirt on the planet is actually in Medina. It's the dirt that touches the blessed body of the Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is what we see many of the scholars, like Imam Malik, they preferred Medina to Mecca, but it is for this reason. Not for like any alleyway in Medina. The average alleyway in Medina, Mecca is better than it. The average alleyway in Medina is superseded by the average alleyway in Mecca. But the point where the Prophet ﷺ, where his blessed body is, the dirt that touches that is the most sacred place on the planet. And we know that the house in Mecca, the Kaaba, was destroyed in the flood of Noah. And so when we read in the Holy Quran that the house, please turn off your cell phones. When we read that the house was resurrected, or it was put on its foundations by Abraham, alayhi salatu wasalam, what Abraham was doing was he was rebuilding the Kaaba. So it was first built by Adam, it was destroyed in the flood, and then it was rebuilt by Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and Ismail, his son. And so Ibrahim, Allah describes him in the Holy Quran as a ummah, saying that he's a leader for mankind. Ummah, in this sense, is like an exaggerated form of the word imam. Like he's an imam's imam. You know, he's the imam of the other a'imma. He's a ummah. So everybody can look to him for leadership because of the way he preferred sacrifice in his life. He lived a life where he turned away from the earthly dunya and preferred the hereafter, which is most people do the opposite. Most of us, even though we believe in the hereafter, we be like, well, this right here is a for sure though. I know I should stay away from this, but this is a for sure. I can see it with my eyes. What you promising me is like something in the future. People don't like to take credit literally. They be like, I'm all about cash. I went into a place, I tried to pay cash. They said, we don't take cash. I said, man, cash is accepted everywhere. I said, it's okay, man. It was a Muslim store. I said, you guys are believers because y'all ready to put the payment down the line. So I'm going to give you this card and you just got to have faith that you're going to get this money. And that's what Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he sacrificed his family. When he was young, his father, some say his uncle, used to make the idols that people worshiped. This is very lucrative business. Like being able to, if you create something that people believe in, you ain't missing no meals in no time or no space. And so he used his father, this was his business. And he's telling his dad, that's a bunch of shirk. You worshiping something that can't harm or benefit you. He got into an argument with his people. They said, nah, man, we worship the moon. And then he said, I don't worship the ones that set. Says Allah, he's always here. He's Da'iman. Like, you ain't never going to be a time in your life where you're going to be able to get away from God Almighty. Say, God didn't know about that one. He knew about that one too. But his people, they worship the stars and the moon and the sun, and those things are only with you temporarily every day. So, okay, well, when the sun sets, who looking out for you then? God is looking out for you when it's day or night. This is what he's trying to tell his people. But his people, they preferred shirk. So much so that they decided to build a fiery furnace. This story is even known to the Jews and the Christians. It's like mutawatir. They built a fire so hot that they couldn't get next to it. And they said, we're going to put Abraham in that fire. How are we going to get him to it? We're going to build a catapult. We're going to build something that can shoot him into the fire. So they created the catapult to shoot him into the fire. Because it was too hot. They would singe their eyebrows if they got too close to the fire. And so when he's sitting on this catapult, the angel Gabriel comes to him. And he says, is there anything I can help you with? And Ibrahim's reply was, Hasbi Allah wa ni'ma wakil. Because Ibrahim, he said, I'm trusting in Allah because he's a blessed guardian. And then the angel Gabriel said, well, I'm going to see God. Should I take him a message? And Abraham said, God already knows my state. This is Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. Hanifa wa ma kana min al mushrikeen. He wasn't one of the polytheists. And so when he built the Kaaba, him and his son, he established the pilgrimage. But even on top of that, when he was thrust into the fire, God made the fire cool. He wasn't burned from it. Even though the people surrounding it, they burned their facial hair. It was so hot, they burned their eyebrows. But he was inside of it, and it was a place of safety for him. And then he built a house in Palestine for people to worship. They have a city in Palestine called Al-Khalil. That's where Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he's buried there. In Palestine, they have a place where his son Isaac, he's buried there. Some of the ulama, there's a difference of opinion. Who's the sacrificial son? For many, many years, I thought it was Ismail myself. It was like the story, it got to be Ismail. Know what I'm saying? But as I got older, I started to think, I don't think it's Ismail. After I became a dad myself, I said, well, I don't think it's Ismail anymore. Because he had already did that sacrifice with Ismail. He left him in the desert. It was already proven. He chose God's commandment over Ismail and his mother. But Isaac, and he watched Isaac grow up, man. He watched Isaac grow up. And God is saying, sacrifice this boy. Now, I mean, it's whether you think it's Ismail or Isaac, the point is that he was willing to sacrifice his son. And God exchanged that sacrifice for a ram. And that's why many of the scholars of this religion say it's wajib that in the Eid, this Eid al-Adha, if you can afford a sacrifice, you have to do a sacrifice. If you can't afford it, you don't. But if you can afford it, many Imam Shafi says it's sunnah. Everybody becomes Shafi'is and Eid al-Adha when it's on a Thursday and a Friday. We be like, man, I gotta get back to work. I can't go to the farm. Imam, they say one of the scholars say it's a sunnah. I'm just gonna go with that. But if you can sacrifice, most of the scholars of this religion say it's wajib, meaning it's almost obligatory. meaning it's obligatory unless you have an excuse not to do it. And that's because this was the sacrifice that Abraham was willing to sacrifice his beloved son. So what does it mean? If Abraham is our imam, then don't tell me I'm not going to take off on Eid and make the Eid prayer. Because Abraham was willing to sacrifice his child. This religion is a religion of sacrifice. Aqulu qawli hadha wa astaghfirullaha li wa lakum. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wa mursaleen. Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Yaqulullahu ta'ala fil Qur'anil Kareem. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. So we wanted to talk briefly about Dhul Hijjah, because it's very, very important that when we live in the West, we all kind of know about Ramadan, but Dhul Hijjah can kind of sneak up on us. Now we getting ready to get into it. In our mind, we should be saying to ourselves, what am I going to do? Am I going to fast? Am I going to give charity? Am I going to feed the hungry? What am I going to do for this sacred time in the Islamic calendar? And so I just want to give a reminder. Sometimes you get that reminder and it's like too close. You be like, man, I ain't ready to do nothing. So we try and give everybody a little bit more time. Allahumma ihdina fi man hadait wa afina fi man afait wa tawallanna fi man tawallait. Innaka taqdi wa la yuqda alayk. Allahumma ansur al-Islami wal izzil muslimin wa thabit aqdam al-mujahideen fi kulli makan. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i